Let's just see in a minute if.
Yeah, maybe we can start. Introduce myself. Okay, my name is Jim. I'm a senior developer. Right now, I'm in the e-transfer team.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay.
So we're just starting with the introduction. So
yeah, I just finished. I just finished introducing myself. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm working as a senior software developer in e-transfer. I've total around like 15 years of experience and worked on Java technologies in my career. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Did you already give your intro for squad and the dev lead? Yeah. So you start with your introduction. I can't hear you. Is it audible for you?
And I work on Java technologies, recently like Spring Boot, and I'm working in Mississauga, and my company is Cognizant, and I work for a US client that is Truist Bank, and that's the application I work on.
Okay, I just want to get better understanding. You are applying for senior Java role for like a venture company?
I am applying for, I think, TCS.
Okay. I thought you mentioned Cognizant, right?
Sorry?
I thought you mentioned Cognizant. You were working for Cognizant.
Yeah, I'm now working for Cognizant. Once I get this job, I will be moving to TCS.
Oh, okay. So it's like that. Okay. I thought TCS usually hires first and then they place the candidate, right? That's not how they're doing now. Anyways.
Yeah, I'm not sure how they're.
Okay. Fine. So let's get into the interview part then. So basically, you are dealing with the project which deals with payments and it has international payments too. And you are primarily in the development of microservices, right?
Yes.
So in this case, when you are trying to integrate with maybe third parties, right, to do the international payments, how did you, what kind of systems did you integrate with to do the international wire transfer?
Yeah, as I said, right, like our application basically does this MTS. There is a system that's a mainframe system, MTS money transfer system. That's again, I'm not sure like which systems but our request basically consists of all the data in an XML format sent to in the final stage. Once we like most of the parameters consist of who is the beneficiary, who is the initiator, and there would be a couple of approvals, and once the approvals are done, then finally all that information is gathered in an XML format and submitted to MTS system.
Okay, and what interface, like how did you communicate with this MTS system? So you mentioned XML. So it's like, did MTS system export like a web service to you and you're making SOAP calls? Or
Yeah, like there is a SOAP call between our system. So there is only one SOAP call, the final SOAP call, which we gather all the information. Like basically, we do a lot of validations when we are initiating the wire. So initiation requires like what is the source and what type of account is it, whether it is checking account, savings account, and then there is the wire date and the wire transfer amount, and it involves like certain different types of wires are there. Like we have something called as domestic wire, then we have international wire, then there is an ISET wire. ISET wire is basically the client is a domestic consumer basically, and then in international wire it can be like a small business owner who can do an international wire, but ISET wire is something which is specific to a consumer who is like a individual. So that particular iSet wire, the condition we have is once the consumer raises the iSet wire, within 30 minutes he can cancel that wire. That is a norm given by US department. And after that 30 minutes hold, within that 30 minutes hold, that particular consumer can cancel the wire. Otherwise, it will auto submit to the system. And when he is doing that, we have, if it is a domestic wire, it is US dollars, which directly like there is no conversion and all. But if it is a international wire where the currencies are different, then it all gets converted to the US dollar amount, and then there is a equivalent receiving amount which is mentioned. And basically, like our application is everything is the information is gathered, and there is like there are some rules in the system where if the wire amount is greater than this limit to this limit, then it goes for one level approval, and if it is more than a certain limit, then it goes like 2 level approvals. And there is also routing information involved where the entire state, entire US is divided into regions, states, regions, and centers.
Yeah, no, like I'm not very interested in the whole functionality of the application, right? Primarily, what's your role in what you develop? What did you exactly work on?
Yeah, I'm a Java developer. So exactly like different modules and microservices where we get the balances, then validation part and approval part, and certain codes we get for country codes, and then you have cutoff functionality and
okay, let's say you have to develop microservices from scratch, right? So how will you go about developing it?
So we basically like split the functionality into like one unit of work. Basically, the particular microservice would be responsible for doing its own functionality where there is no dependency, and it could be scalable, and it could be interoperable, and it can be deployed without a lot of dependency. And there should be, if there is a communication between multiple services, then there should be something where you do the microservices communication, and finally during doing all this process, then there may be a place where you have to like store the data in the tables and then retrieve them. But basically, one particular microservice would be having its own boundary sorted according to its functionality.
Okay. So what kind of dependencies you will start with if you want to develop a microservice?
So basically, previously, before microservices, there was this Spring MVC, but now we have got Spring and then Spring Boot. It would be we could start with the starter web dependency, and based on what all functionalities it is going to use. Like suppose if it is going to use inter-service communication, then you have to add the REST client. Then if that microservice is going to use database, then you have to add the JPA dependency. And if that is going to be added as a client for the Eureka server, then it should be the discovery client should be added. And if it is going to use some metrics from the service, then you have to add the actuator dependency. And if it is going to be part of the admin server, then you have to add the admin client dependency. And if you are using some security, then you have to add the security starter. And based on that, like whatever functionalities the particular service is going to use. Based on that, you start adding the dependencies in your form.xml.
Okay, so let's say you want to define a controller, right? What kind of annotation will you use to define a REST controller?
At REST controller, that would be your annotation, and you would have request mapping, and then for the individual get methods, post methods, put methods, and pass methods, you would have their respective annotations, and inside the get methods, and you would be using the request path, like path variables. You will be defining the path variables, and then also if you are trying to save a record, then for the post mapping you would be using the request body, and finally then if you are trying to send the response from the controller, then you would be using the response entity to send the response and wrap it and send it in the response, and then I think that's it. Again, if you are using some request parameters, then you would use request param, and if you are using some values from the application properties file, then you would use the at value to get the values from the application properties file, and the REST controller itself is like is discovered by the component scan and the controller object.
Okay, let's assume you want to have a way to handle exceptions. Let's say there is some internal server error on your system. You want to return a specific error code to indicate to the client that something went wrong in the system. How will you go about doing it?
Yeah, like basically in each of the method you can handle exceptions using like basically if it is a checked exception, you have to throw it or throw it and handle at the global level, or what you can do is you can use a try catch blocks, and in the try catch blocks in the catch scenario, you can throw from there and then the global exception can be handled, or otherwise in the catch, like you can throw your like basically user not found exception or like no records exception. Like you can create your own exceptions and throw it from there. And also there is a global exception handler which you extends response entity exception handler. You can write that as a global exception, and response entity exception handler provides a lot of methods where you can override those methods and then send that in the response entity. And basically the codes, like the HTTP status codes, will define like status 200, 201, 203, 204, 500, like okay, accepted, bad request, and you can multiple ways like you can do all that.
Okay, what's the difference between a checked exception and an unchecked exception?
Yeah, checked exception basically for sure shot during the compile time itself, like if you are trying to read a file because there could be an IO exception, that is like a checked exception, and there are other exceptions which occurs only at runtime. So the runtime exceptions basically you cannot detect when they are going to happen, like null pointer exception or array index out of bounds or number format exception or memory or stack overflow or anything like that. Those are like runtime exceptions. Runtime exceptions basically you don't know. That is the reason you have to use the try catch, and you don't know like what type of exception, like the request is not correct, or so those are like runtime exceptions.
Okay, let's say you define a method which is in a transitional boundary, correct? And then one scenario is where you get a checked exception, one scenario is where you get an unchecked exception. So how the transaction happen there? Will the transaction be committed or the checked exception? And what will happen to a transaction if an unchecked exception is true or a runtime exception is true?
So both the times, when there is an exception, the transaction does not complete because it is an exception, and so transaction again it depends. When you have transaction, basically you are grouping all the multiple small units of work as one unit of work. Basically, you have to debit some account and then credit to an account. So those two individual units are being considered as one single unit of work. So if there is an exception in the first step or the second step, basically it's an exception. So in that exception, basically the transaction is treated as a whole. So basically, it will not complete. It will be the transaction is because there is an exception. So you treat that. So you won't complete the transaction. It is basically rolled back.
What did you use to process data in the database? What kind of libraries did you use?
We used MySQL, and in the data source, we define the URL data source, URL class name, dialect, password. Again, they come from the config server where it is encrypted, and then we have entity classes, and then those entity classes we have the table mapping, column mapping, and then you have the join table where there is a one-to-many and many-to-many and bidirectional and unidirectional compositions. I think the MySQL dependency, and then that's it.
Okay, what does lazy loading mean?
Lazy loading means it is loaded when it is required. It does not create the record of the data. Basically, in Spring Boot, when the component scan happens, all the required auto-wide objects are already loaded ready for you. But when you mention it's a lazy load, it does not load only when you say find all users or find all users or get the users by that property name or whatever the JPA repository or third repository does. So basically, if it is required, it will load. Whenever you are trying to fetch, it gets the data.
If you get an exception like lazy load initialization exception, what do you think might be the problem?
First thing would be I'll try to get this SQL. There is a application.properties to print the SQL in the logs again logs of the console. And if it is a lazy load, basically maybe if it is an exception, we have to check if that particular table or is there any maybe sometimes you have primary key, foreign key, and that particular foreign key is not available, or that particular record is not available, or there is some issue with the DB. So you have to check all those because if lazy load is needed, you need to make sure that particular data is available. Otherwise, I think in Hibernate we have something called as this load and get, where load gives an exception. Get means for sure you'll get that because the data is already there. But I'm thinking on that lines.
Okay, so I will pass. So because we need to give different set of questions to you and later discuss among ourselves. So yeah.
So I would like to ask you about some Java related questions only, like which version of Java did you use?
We are using Java 11.
Okay. And like what are the differences then? Did you use Java 8? Like after Java 8, there were like so many new features which we got, right?
Yeah, like we basically use a lot of stream methods, and we use like collections, and then we use these functional interfaces, and this optional class which was introduced in Java 8, just to check if the data is like present or not.
So what kind of exception, if once you use optional, like what is the use case? Like what benefit did it give you?
Yeah, like suppose if you are trying to get a record or some value, basically sometimes the value is not present, so you make it null, and or when you are trying to iterate on a list, or when you are trying to iterate on a set or anything. Not set, but list, basically. Sometimes you may encounter null values, or basically when you call some method on a variable which has null, you get null pointer exception. So because of that, what they have done is they have introduced optional. Optional has like is present or is empty. So basically it will tell you if there is a value or not. If it is not present, then you don't, it will tell you whether the value is there or not. If it is not present, then you can throw some exception. So optional is like a better version to check null pointer exception.
Okay, and you mentioned about streams also. So can you give some examples, like how are streams beneficial, or there are any limitations with regards to performance, and what kind of streams can you use?
Yeah, like the streams, basically like with this Java 8 features, they have introduced this enhanced for loop where you can use that, and also iterator. I think it was previously there, but iterator has been improved. And then on the streams, like you have multiple methods, like you can use map and filter. Basically, map is to like convert like you can pass a functional interface lambda expression there to convert like suppose employee some value, or touch to uppercase, or that is one kind of functionality for the map, where you are transforming the object to a different thing. And then there is something called as filter, where you can filter based on the like when you are trying to iterate, you filter only those items, and then you add them to a different collection, and then you can collect that particular filtered items or mapped items in a way you want to do. Like you have collectors dot to list, collectors dot to map, or collectors dot to set, so that like you get that you receive them. And the stream is like basically an improved version of this dynamic programming, where like you can call multiple methods, like sort method, or count method, or max method, min method, the intermediate operations, and then finally you can skip method, and you can have limit method, where you can like limit only 3 of them, or sort method. Collections also have sort, but this is like more faster. And there are multiple, and you have like this flat map, like flattening of the things. There are multiple methods which are covered in the streams, which will do faster work.
So do you think streams are better or parallel streams are better, though in performance wise?
Again, Parallel streams also, like I haven't used much parallel streams, but I'm thinking like whenever there is something like a synchronized and fail-safe collection, I think you can use parallel streams.
Okay. And have you in any of your implementation, did you get a chance to work on the asynchronous kind of implementations, where you just fire the request and forget about it, and then that kind of any use case?
Yeah, that one I think we used this like Kafka for sometimes if the services are down, then we have a service which will collect the Kafka messages, and when the service is up, basically part of circuit breaker fallback implementations, we have used Kafka, where once that particular microservice comes up, it reads all those messages and then process the failed items.
Okay, because in Java we got that completable future also, right? So by any chance did you use that?
No.
Okay, no worries. And I see you have mentioned in your resume that you have used like Docker. So how do you have any idea on that deployments? Like how do you, like what kind of?
Basically in each of our microservice, like we have a Docker file. The Docker file basically it will have all the components where suppose if that particular microservice needs Java 11 environment, then you can mention that in the Docker file. And if there is a dependency on database, then you can mention that. And basically all the things which it needs to run can be mentioned in the Docker file. And then this is at each microservice level. And finally, when there is at a higher level, at a global level, we have this Docker Compose, which will instruct which microservice to load first. Basically, like if there is a API gateway or like Eureka server, it should load first, and then how many instances of this with each service having its own name, and then it has a network and volume, and that all goes in the Docker Compose file. And when you do the deployment using this Jenkins, basically that will pull up the code, and then it will make a jar file, and then it will have that to run that as Docker images. So the file will build the images, and then images are like deployed as containers in the OpenShift platform.
So you basically, while development, you run the application's image in local, or how do you do? Like Docker desktop will have
like most of the time, like we like get the code and run it. But sometimes, like for testing, we have this like run as Docker image as that particular. We have this Windows Docker tool where we can just to test how that is. Sometimes how to behave, how that particular application is behaving. We add that embedded Tomcat, and then we test using that Docker tool.
So if suppose you have created an image and you're trying to deploy it in dev environment, and your application is not running, so how do you debug it? Like how do you to find out why the image is not running? What steps would you follow to debug it?
Basically, like we will take that image and try to see the ports, try to see the Compose Docker file, and we'll try to check the network configuration, like see if when we start that, how that is behaving in the local machine.
Where will you check the logs? Like, what can you list down some commands? Like, first command, what you will run to see what happened to that application, what happened to that image?
So that image, like when we have this embedded Tomcat, so whenever we try to invoke that URL from the browser, it should print the values in the console, like because it has that embedded Tomcat. When you try to invoke, so there is something called as jar Java jar, that particular jar file. We run that. When we run that, we can see the values in the console.
Suppose a step back on a VM, what all images are there? Can you tell me that command?
I think Docker images, like when you go to the CLI, you say like Docker images and Docker PS and Docker, like you can see the process ID, whether it is from how long it is running.
And can you enter into any process and then check the logs and everything? If the application is running, can you access that application to see what is happening within that?
On the OCP platform, on the pods, in each pod, we can see the console logs basically on that console. Like we have read-only access, so we can, when we invoke that, we can see in the console errors and all. But if it needs more scrutiny and all, then we bring that image into our system and then try to do the Maven install and Maven compile in the target folder, then take it and then run it on our local system.
Okay. And so did you work on Spring Batch also?
No, but I am aware of Spring Batch. You have set of classes which you need to implement. Basically, the job you have to basically you are trying to read. The overview I have on Spring Batch is basically it takes the job and multiple threads act on that particular job and that job can be completed quickly.
It's okay. It's okay. If you haven't worked on it, that's fine. That's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I'm good from my side. Jim?
Okay, so my turn. It's just from some Java question. Okay, so there's a keyword called finally, right?
I'm sorry, Jim, what was that? Keyword?
Finally, yeah, there's a Java keyword called finally. So what it means finally? Try catch finally.
Finally keyword.
Yeah, finally.
Oh, okay, finally, yeah, basically, try, catch, and finally. So basically, whenever you add finally, it will execute for sure, and in that finally, most of the time when we write finally, I have used it where you have to close some DB connections or transactions. Finally, you have to do some cleanup things where even though the exception happens, and suppose if it has come to exception, and then you have done what you have to be doing in the exception, and finally that particular code executes.
Okay, so if we have a return sentence in try, and it's gonna be run finally code or not?
Yeah, if it is written and there is no exception at all, then finally won't run because okay, you are saying finally. Yeah, I think finally will run all the time, even if it is written.
Okay, if it's a run before return or after return.
after written.
After written, okay. Okay, another question. Do you know about deadlock and how to avoid deadlock?
Deadlock, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, when you have some method which is like run in a multi-threaded environment, then that method you need to put a keyword called as synchronized, so that only one thread enters into that method, and you allow deadlocks.
Okay, so how to avoid deadlock? You mean add a synchronized keyword?
Synchronized keyword in front of the method name, so that one thread exits that method, then the other thread can enter.
Okay, do you know any other way we can avoid the deadlock other than synchronized keyword?
No, sorry.
Okay, it's fine. Another question, do you know about the thread local?
Sorry, what?
Thread local. You know about thread local?
No, not to understand. Local, swipe.
Yeah, thread local.
Thread local?
Yeah. Thread local, no? You never heard?
No, I'm not heard.
Okay.
No. Thread local.
Okay. Do you know about the difference between array list and the linked list?
Linked list and list, right?
Array list and linked list.
Array list is basically linked list is it stores previous. It has array is basically array list is basically just like array, but it is with initial size 10 it gets created, and whenever that capacity increases more than 50%, then it doubles in size, and it is basically collections way of implementing arrays. But linked list is basically you can traverse the linked list from you can go. It will be in an order in the insertion order, and it is like a link to the previous one, and then the link to the future link. It stores the values, and yeah.
And what's the scenario we should use the linked list better than array list?
Array list. Sorry, array list. Why will you use a linked list and why will you use array list?
Yes, yeah.
Linked list also you have this add method and remove method, and insertion order is maintained in linked list. That's what.
Sorry?
Yeah. Insertion order is maintained. Suppose in array list, you have 4 elements and you have inserted something in 1 or 2. Then all the elements move by that particular item. Linked list also not, but yeah. Linked list basically traversal. I've never not used much linked list. Most of the time it would be list and array list.
Okay.
And if it is vector and stack for synchronized things.
Okay. I will ask some REST API question. So we return HP code 200 and 201, 202, right? And what's the difference to 201 and 202?
Which code is it? HP code?
HP static code.
Response. Is referring to HTTP codes?
Yeah.
HTTP codes like they tell the user like what is the status. Like if it is a post, then you say created. If it is created, or if it is a put or pass, then you say accepted. And if it is just get all the methods, then you say okay. And sometimes if it is a bad request, then you say bad request. Then sometimes very generic, you don't know anything, then you say internal server, or that status codes will tell the clients like whether it is like the front end application of anyone who is working our REST services. The status code will indicate like basically appropriate status code had to be sent.
Okay, let me give an example. Like your application is working very fine in dev and QA, right? But it went to production and the response time is really bad, right? So what do you think might be the issue?
Maybe there is some network latency, or it is so in production the number of users are more, and more number of people are using the application. In test environment, again if it is a major release, then you do this performance testing. But if it is in production, there may be some service which is delaying the things, like where you are expecting the response, or if there is suppose you are trying to get a value from the table which is having like lot of records and lot of scans are happening. So in production, always the data makes the things different, because large amount of data is accumulated there, meaning like the volumes in the test and dev are nothing compared to the production volume. So
okay, let's say assume you found that a query is running really slow in production, right? Yeah. How do you try to go and fix it?
We basically ask the DBA to do some analysis on the particular query, and ask him like if there is some indexes we need to define, or we ask why that delay is happening, or we try to improve cache if we are using some third-party caches. And if there is a loading problem, we try to load it before, and we'll see the response time, why it is delayed, basically, like something is not working as expected. So yeah, the table and the DB makes an important thing there. And the caching is one thing, and then scaling up the parts, or trying to improve, add some memory.
Okay. Yes. So you are out of time. I need to join another meeting. Do you have any questions for us?
Yeah, Interact, I'm in Canada, and I know it's very the biggest one, which is being used by all the banks, all major banks. Again, Interact I did not find in US, but here everything is done. So I expect lot of volumes and lot of work, lot of pressure. So not sure how they're all handled, but I'm expecting a quite challenging environment, and somebody's working for it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's a domestic to Canada. That way, yeah, the volume is very high and growing a lot. We see a huge spike in the last couple of years due to the no pandemic and all, and a lot of online shopping. Yeah, that's true. Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you all for your
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.